Welcome back to the Mackem In The Middle podcast, the last podcast related to Sunderland, at least a reaction podcast until after the World Cup. Of course, that starts in just about a week's time, possibly less actually. I'm not entirely sure when the first game is. But the last game for Sunderland was, of course, away to Birmingham on Friday night. Another game that was moved to Sky Sports, a game that Sunderland won 2-0 with goals from Amad Diallo and Ellis Sims. And as always, we'll get through what happened during the game. And we'll touch on a little bit about, the season so far as we're approaching the halfway point. I think 21 games, or 20 games in the season, I should say, and obviously 26
20 games
left. Yeah, 26 left after the World Cup.
Because I looked at it earlier.
Yeah,
sorry,
one game in hand.
Because I looked at it earlier.
Yeah, always love a game in hand, don't we? Of
course we do. Shame we don't win them often enough.
Season bound to change eventually. This season's the one. But like we said there, John, 2-0 win away from home, last game before the World Cup, and every game is important to win, but I feel like a win before a sustained break is more important than most.
Yeah, I think it is, especially on the run we're on, a bit of inconsistency. It'll give a lot of the squad, confidence, and you could probably pick out single players like sort of Ellis Sims going into the break with getting on the score sheet. Amad Diallo looking full of confidence. So yeah, it's a good thing to go in like on I'd say like an all-round high. Obviously me and you were there. It was absolutely buzzing in the away end, and it was a very sort of poignant result, really, without trying to drum it up too much. But yeah, like you say, it's a nice break now, even though it's a bit weird. I think it's maybe come at the right time with the squad. For a few tired legs to get a bit of a break, us to go through tactically and a few things and have a break, and then sort of reconvene ready to go against Millwall on December the 3rd. But yes, I think we did say, we touched on it before, I think with Kyle, and it was about not just getting 3 points, even though that is ultimately what we need to do, but to add a performance to it as well, which personally I think we did, barring a few maybe edgy moments towards the end of the game. So, and they're no slouches, Birmingham, to be fair, even though I'd say we put them to the sword. It's a very good result and a very good performance.
Yeah, and obviously the performance in the ground will have probably seemed a little bit different to the performance that you saw on TV, because quite frankly, once you score a goal, you kind of just switch off for the next kind of 15 minutes of the game and just celebrate the goal, which is what happened, and still got the marks on the back of my leg from it. So that's always one to remember. But when you're watching it on TV, like I say, Michael, it is a little bit different. And when I was looking at Twitter, there was a few people saying that, the performance wasn't great from Sunderland. There was a few mistakes even then. Obviously, we'll get into the goal that they scored. And I just realised I said it was 2-0 to Sunderland, and it wasn't. It was 2-1 to Sunderland, because Birmingham did score in the second half. So I'll take that one back. But from watching it on TV, would you say the performance was a lot better than it has been in recent weeks? Obviously, look at the Cardiff game. Couldn't have been worse than that. But taking that one out, there has been a bit of criticism about the performances, especially over 90 minutes. Over the past kind of 3 or 4 games. But it was an improvement against Birmingham, wasn't it?
When you contrast it and compare it to the Cardiff game, certainly for the first hour of that match, I think obviously that was just, but we've talked on the Cardiff game enough. Personally, I think when watching the Birmingham, I didn't think we were brilliant. I think to be fair, you've got to give respect to Birmingham, because I think that's their first home defeat, or first defeat at St Andrews since the end of August, which I think says a lot about how we did to win the game. Parts of our game were pretty good. When we were able to get into our rhythm and get our passages of play going, and we're able to interchange passes with each other, then I think we actually looked really good. I think we got lucky. I think we got lucky on 1 or 2 of occasions. I think obviously the first 10 minutes, Troy Deeney gets a header off the crossbar, which obviously if that's the underside of the bar, then it's 1-0 and it's a different game potentially. But again, we've had moments like that where, if something happens one way or another, then it's a different match altogether. So it's nice to get that rub of the green a bit. But I think certainly in the first half, as we wore on, we started to get a bit more control of the game. And I think, and obviously, to be fair, we got lucky on a few occasions. But again, maybe you could say it's not luck. You could say that players stood up in big moments. The one that I'm thinking of in the first half is obviously that through ball to Scott Hogan, and Matt Patterson basically spreads himself as wide as possible to make the goal harder to aim at. So Yeah, I would say compared to Cardiff, it was definitely an improvement. I think we've played better than that personally, but maybe I've got a different perspective watching it on the TV as opposed to watching it in the stadium. Yes, obviously we wanted a performance, but I think ultimately after Cardiff, we just needed to get the win, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get through what happened in the game as quick as we can in the player rating. Like I said before we finish today, we'll touch on kind of the season so far and, the best players, the best moments, whatnot. So starting with the first goal that Sunderland did score, John, obviously they had a chance early in the game, and I think it was Ahmad that forced a save from Birmingham keeper, who I think is Alsop, I think it was.
John Ruddy.
John Ruddy.
Who Cardiff goalkeeper, that wasn't it, Alsop? John Ruddy, of course, for Birmingham. But the first goal for Sunderland obviously came through Ahmad again. He got the assist. Watching it back, you do question what Birmingham defenders are doing because they just kind of let him run rings around them. But he works a bit of space, plays through to Sims, and it's a very good finish from Sims.
Yeah, it's an excellent finish. I think you could probably strip down the whole build-up. I think Pritchard does well to hold off his man. And Diallo somehow seems to roll 4 players. They're all sort of worried about him, and it's been a little bit of a frustrating thing. I think previously where we've had players, sort of Jack Clark or Patrick Roberts, who have had sort of 2 or 3 men marking them, which sounds crazy, but if they are being marked, there is going to be space then for other people. And like you say, Diallo's got 4 men around him. And what the Birmingham defence are doing, I'll never know, because Ellis Sims, who, to be fair, is a tidy finisher, has just left on his own, and he slots into the bottom corner, and that's exactly the type of finish that you're going to see from him. We need to obviously provide those moments. He hasn't had a lot since he's come back from injury, but there's definitely a player in there, and it's a cracking finish, to be fair.
Yeah. And of course, that made it 1-0, and I can confirm there was at least 7 people on the floor around me. A couple went down the stairs, a couple of injuries here and there. It was a good goal, good finish. And I said that the kind of atmosphere around that goal, I think it was one more sense of relief because of how poor we've played recently. Going behind in games and having to claw our way back into the game. But take the lead, Michael, just boded well for the rest of the game.
It did. Well, these things are cliches, but one of my friends has always said to me that they're cliches because they're true, because they reflect, they're accurate to when you're talking about the game. And the cliche is the first goal is always the most important one in so many ways. Because if Birmingham take the lead, then obviously does the confidence start to drain at that point? Do we then start to hide within ourselves? Does our game plan then go out the window? So to take the lead, I think was actually, you're right. I think it was very, very important to gain confidence, to gain momentum, change the flow of the game, and to give us the platform to do what we did in the rest of the match. Every time as you said yourself, we've had to crawl behind in a lot of results recently. We fell behind against Cardiff, we fell behind against Luton, obviously ultimately fell behind against Burnley, even though we scored first in that. Fell behind against Blackburn, Wigan. We've fallen behind in quite a lot of fixtures and conceded the first goal more often than not. Even though performances, I think, on the whole haven't been bad, but it was just nice for once to just get ourselves in front and give us the platform. And like John said, it was a very, very, very good finish. You can't complain at that, really. As you said, Birmingham's defence was just all over the place. There was at least 3 or 4 players around Amad Diallo, and somehow he got the ball through all of them to get to Ellis Sims. But, as I'm sure you'll agree, we are not complaining at it.
We're not. Second goal, obviously just after half-time. We've obviously made a big kind of discussion point about how Sunderland will have to concede 5 minutes either side of half-time, but it was this time Sunderland that scored in that period, and it was about 3 or 4 minutes after the interval, Michael, that we did take the second goal, took a 2-0 advantage, and again, Ahmad with the goal. Good work from Dan Neil. I think it came from a Birmingham attack, really. Ball comes out of Dan Neil. He turns his man, plays it through to Diallo, and the trajectory of the ball was straight at me in the away end. And I thought that was going so far wide of the post, but he curls it in the far corner, and that is a very good finish. And, again, we've said it a couple of times this season, and definitely for the month, but potentially for the season, you'll look back and that's another goal that'll be up there as one of the goals of the season, especially for Sunderland.
Isn't that meant to be our third potential goal of the season contender?
In the space of a month or so, yeah.
Clark against Reading, Pritchard, Huddersfield, and now this one. I don't know what it is about Sunderland at the minute, but we seem to score some beautiful goals. If you touch on the goal, the ball from Dan Neil was just exquisite. This is one of the things that, yes, Dan Neil's young and he'll make errors, but these are the type of things that make the club rate him, and I'd like to think that fans should give him, because I've seen some fans go a bit hard on Dan Neil, which I personally think is very, very harsh. And I think that pass is just brilliant. And Ahmad, and don't get me wrong, it's not just all about the pass itself. Amad Diallo still had a lot to do. When he got the ball down the right flank, he still had to cut inside, basically to get the technique right on the shot and accurately fire it. And it went in off the post, didn't it?
I don't even think it hit the post. I think it went straight in the net.
No, I know it went in the net, but I'm pretty sure. Well, maybe I'm talking rubbish then. But either way, it hit the far side of the net.
Just hit the post. I think it does.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll go back and watch it again in a minute. I don't need an excuse to rewatch it, but I've got one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just great. I mean, you're right. And obviously, I've had that before when I've been at games where you think a shot's going to go well wide and then it ends up actually going in the net. It always looks different when you're live as opposed to on TV, because obviously I had the benefit of watching it a few times on a camera angle. And I can only imagine from your perspective that if you had three or four people jumping around you for the first goal, what it would have been like for the second.
Yeah, absolutely. It was mayhem for that second goal.
Your shins are in bits.
Yeah, the back of my leg is definitely scraped to the bone.
That's what away days are made of, though, aren't they? That's what you remember.
Absolutely. I did end the game without a seat as well, ironically. That wasn't my fault.
How did you manage that?
I mean, there was someone stood behind me, because you know what away games like, no one, is where they should be. Someone stood behind me. We scored a second goal. He jumped from my chair and it just snaps. So luckily, we were winning, so there was no need to sit down. So I didn't need a seat, but that seat is not there for the next away game. So whoever's sitting in for 1368, that is, you might not want to sit down for that game. But one thing that football teaches you, John, especially as a Sunderland fan, is to not, get attached to loan players. Some in the past we've had a chance of signing. Amad Diallo is categorically not going to be signing for Sunderland on a permanent deal, because I think he cost Man United the same that the club cost Kirill Louis-Dreyfus. So the price tag is a bit out of our reach at the moment, but you're starting to see why Man United paid so much money for him.
Yeah, Man United don't sign too many bad youngsters. I think it's the senior players, they're probably bad ones they sign. But yeah, just a very
headlines now, isn't there?
A very, very, very good player. Very technically good. Maybe just struggled for confidence. He's almost like a young sort of Patrick Roberts. He's obviously, he's done the rounds at a few clubs and not really maybe been loved or been given, the responsibility. Whereas now, if you're Patrick Roberts on Friday night, you're probably fuming that you're not starting, because Diallo starts. And I think Mowbray even touched on it and said that Diallo's a bit more sort of mobile than Patrick Roberts. And even then, I think Roberts would probably be a little bit arsy about that. But in fairness, it proved right from the first. It seemed to be a massive confidence shift. Like we've seen him in recent weeks where he's been a bit hesitant and, we think, should he shoot? Has he done the right decision? And obviously took his goal perfectly well and got an assist as well. But his all-round play, he just played the game at his pace. He had their left back on toast like all the time. Obviously it's a shame that, ultimately we're going to have to accept that he's not going to be able to stay here. But I think it's just one of them things. We always, there's always a lone player you fall in love with every season, and this year it's Amad Diallo.
Yeah, they're usually French speaking as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
But obviously 2-0 up, cruising in the game, Michael. Wouldn't be a Sunderland game, wouldn't be a Sunderland away game, home game, whatever game you want to label it as, without some kind of nail-biting end to the game. And I think after that second goal, Birmingham obviously stepped it up and made a few changes. Chong came on, who caused trouble. And I think Job Bellingham went off, which, for someone that's so highly rated, can't remember him touching the ball for Birmingham, to be honest. But obviously they stepped up the game, they got a goal, and you have to say it's from a mistake from Bailey Wright. And it's a one that you look at and think, how the hell has he missed the ball from that cross? Good finish from, I think I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, but good finish, but you've got to stop that cross. The ball comes in, we didn't do enough to stop the cross initially, but to miss the clearance there as well, he's probably gone with the wrong foot as well.
Lucas Yukovic is the player that you're trying not to pronounce, so
That's
I
the
can
one.
do it for you. And I'm usually terrible with. I'm usually the last person you want to have a pronunciation from. But yes, Bailey Wright. Even as someone who's the head of the Bailey Wright Fan Club Association, that was poor. And it's one of the mistakes that I think, on the whole, in recent times when Bailey Wright's played, I don't think he's actually made that many errors. But that is an error. That is on Bailey Wright, because if he gets the correct contact with that ball, then Yukovic doesn't have the chance to score the goal. And to be fair, like you say yourself, it is a very good finish, but it should never have got to that point. Everyone knows by now I always rate keeping clean sheets, and yes, I'm basically not bothered about it because we ended up winning the game, but it made the end of the game much, much harder than it really should have been for us.
Yeah, it did. And there was obviously a few scares. There was 7 minutes added on in that second half, John, which was
Where did he get
surprising.
7 minutes from, by the way?
Generally, I have no idea where he's got 7 minutes from. And there was a nice guy behind me in the away end who, I think there was about 2 minutes left. John Ruddy just going up the corner. And I just hear a voice from behind me saying, I was at this ground when we conceded a 95th minute equaliser to Birmingham from a corner after being 2-0 up. So that was a nice reminder. And luckily, it didn't come to fruition. But we never make it easy for ourselves, do we?
No, but that's the Sunderland way. As soon as you even think, that you're safe and home and dry, and even my lad was like, "Oh, it's 2-0, we'll win now," and I was thinking, there's plenty of time left, and you never know with Sunderland. You just never know. We're cruising against QPR. We all know what happened.
I have to be honest. When John Ruddy went up for that corner, I did just have flashbacks to that QPR game.
I did as well, watching it back after a bit. I couldn't even look at the screen because I was thinking, not another goal.
Yeah,
surely not.
Yeah, but it's finally nice to see. I think Patterson made a real crucial save on a block and sort of punched it out, and there was a bit more ruthlessness of in resolute defending. So it does show you that it is there. And to be fair, doing that without the likes of Sirkin and 09, who will throw their bodies in. You've got Huggins and Trey Hume. Obviously, they're not the biggest, but for both.
I think I was looking at the squad that we have, and there's 5 starting defenders all missing from the game against Birmingham. You've got Gooch, Ballard, Elise, O'Nien, and Sergen. So you've got an entire back 5 missing. So these 4 players, bar probably Danny Bart. You've got Niall Huggins, who hadn't played in 14 to 16 months. He's played full 90 minutes. Trey Hume had probably only his 5th start since he signed for the club over a year ago. And none of them looked out of place. And like you said there, they're putting the bodies on the line. I think it was Trey Hume that made a block off the line, very crucially. I don't think too many people actually really spoke about that after, but that's a game-saving clearance off the line there.
Yeah, like I say, they've, for what we'd call maybe, I don't know, a second choice, back 4, because none of them would, well, barring like Danny Bart, maybe they wouldn't start, maybe not Bailey Wright. We've got a first choice back 4. So for them to defend against, even though they weren't great, still a top 10, team in Birmingham, and, they've got them big lads, obviously Yukovic, who scored as, is like a championship like journeyman, for Birmingham, and has always come and scored, and obviously did score, but to be resolute against those where we know it doesn't always happen like that, I think that really does bode well for when we get those those types of players back. And we could probably point to a lot. Danny Bart stuck his head in there at every opportunity. Obviously Bailey Wright, barring his mistake, was still solid. Huggins, again, these are small lads, who had at fullback, and you could tell they were sort of targeting him. I think it was Trey Hume on the floor, and Scott Hogan went over to him and just sort of berated him in his ear, sort of a young kid, and you're thinking, what you doing, mate? But to be fair, it wasn't overawed in any way. I think we stayed down at the right times to break the play up, a bit of shithousery finally. So yeah, it does bode well, but you do just think, like, if we'd have had a full fit squad, I think we'd definitely be looking, a lot higher than we are now.
Yeah. Player ratings we'll smash through very quickly before we move on to, kind of looking at the season so far. Michael, starting with Patterson for you.
I'm going to go with an 8. I think Patterson was instrumental, I think, in this result, because again, like I alluded to before with the Scott Hogan save in the first half, and like John said, I think it was the save from Dion Sanderson in the second. He had next to no time to react to that second save and managed to make it impeccably. So I think without him, part of me thinks we wouldn't have won the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Trey Hume, John, who I am remarkable at seeing how many headers he wins for someone who's, sub 6 foot.
Yeah, I'll probably go over 7. I thought he was solid. I don't know why, there's always this subconscious worry when he starts thinking, oh, is he a little bit out of his depth? But then he comes up and he's solid. He was solid going forward. He was strong in the tackle and he's fairly decent on the ball as well. And I think I don't know how we've plucked such a good player, but yeah, I was relatively impressed, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think you've talked about how little he's actually played for Sunderland since signing. He's still young. I don't think I've ever seen a player so young look so comfortable in everything that he does. Defensively, going forward, winning the balls in the air, everything he does, he just seems so kind of laid back about it.
Yeah, that's what you want. You obviously we're signing these players, and you think maybe they're a bit overawed. They can be, with the crowds and the pressure, and he just seems to to take it in a stride and not be overawed. I think he's exactly the type of player that we need. And fair play to the the scouting team and the recruitment team. So number one, find him, and number two, actually get him here.
Yeah. Billy Wright, Michael.
I agree with John's assessment before when he said that aside from the error, he was solid, and I agree. However, he made the error which led to the goal. I'll probably go with a 6, being very harsh. But because I think without the error, I think he goes to about a 7, maybe even possibly an 8. But I think I have to be objective here. Yeah, I think I gave it a go with a 6. Made the error for the goal, but otherwise didn't put much of a foot wrong for me.
Yeah. Alongside him, obviously Danny Bart again, John.
Yeah, I'd probably go with an 8 for Danny Bart. I thought he headed everything away.
Yeah.
He will stick his head in at any point, to literally protect that goal. Obviously, he's a leader with, a lot of youngsters in that team. And just, again, another one of those players we've been crying out for years. Now we finally got him. And it's like we could have done with this player like 4 years. I know it's easy to say, 4 years ago, but what an absolute solid man-mountain defender. And yeah, I thought he was very good and definitely a massive contributor to, because they played a lot of balls into the box. And all I remember him is him just heading them away.
Yeah. At left back, obviously Niall Huggins, who I saw play on Monday night, and he looked very good for 23s. It's his first start for the first team, and what I think someone said 14 months, possibly even longer than that, Michael. He came in, he played the full 90 minutes, which I think people were a little bit surprised of, but quite frankly, we have no one else to play in that position with so many injury suspensions. And like I said to John there, 5 defenders missing for the game on Friday. But, he did look a little bit shaky at times, but, like I said, he hasn't played in, a year and a half. He's still a young player. He hasn't played too much first team football wherever he's been. He didn't look too out of place, to the point where you're going to write him off.
No, he didn't. I agree with that. I think the last time he played was probably when we beat Cheltenham 5-0. I think it was like late September last year. So it's roughly 14 months, or at the very least, it's over 13 months. It's well over, either way, it's well over a year. And I think you got to feel for the guy because there was a horror injury that he had, which kept him out for such a long time. So to come back, obviously, to even put in even just playing, I think would have probably been an accolade in itself in some ways. But to play all right, Arthur. I mean, there was a couple of times he did look shaky. I agree. There was 1 or 2 times in the first half where I think he was a little, I don't know what the right word here is, maybe a little overconfident because he was trying to overplay it a little bit. And obviously we got caught out a couple of times. Thankfully, nothing came of his mistakes. But as the game grew on, he grew into the role much better. So I'd go with a 6 just because I agree he was shaky at times at the start. But as the game grew on, he got a lot better. And fair play to him after how long he's been out for.
Yeah. Moving on to midfield, John, start with Dan Neil. Obviously got the assist for the second goal.
Yeah, I'll probably go with an 8, actually. I thought he was, as much as I love him, recent weeks, he's probably really frustrated me, although I won't have a bad word said against him. But yeah, I thought he was really good. I thought he put in some really good tackles. His tracking back was fantastic. I think people probably wouldn't notice, but he did protect the fullbacks quite a lot. Obviously provided the assist after a lovely turn that actually worked and got himself out of trouble. And then a defence splitting pass, and yeah, I thought he was excellent, to be fair.
Yeah, and obviously alongside him, Corey Evans.
I'll go with a 7. I think we miss. I think obviously it's a pretty big talking point from the Cardiff game. We missed his experience, and I think at times when we were under the cosh, he helped calm things down. It basically like to the midfield what Danny Bart is to the defence, really. So yeah, good solid 7 for Corey Evans. We definitely did miss him.
Yeah. Into the attack, John, starting with Jack Clark, who I thought had a very, very frustrating game.
Yeah, I'll probably have to go for 5. Jack Clark, I don't think anything came off for him at all. I'm thinking the first half, they looked for him down on the wing. He couldn't even control the ball. He didn't go in for any headers. Not that that's his game. I don't remember him beating anybody, especially the first half. Second half, I think he must have had himself on a coupon to win a penalty because that's all he tried to do. And again, that didn't even come off either. And it's almost if it's not really working and he's getting a bit frustrated, it takes away his game because on his day he's a fantastic footballer. But yeah, I was not impressed one little bit with him yesterday. And you do have to wonder maybe sometimes do we not bring him off and put Diallo that side because obviously Diallo can go sort of either way and Patrick Rops on the other side. So maybe food for
thought as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe food for thought. Sort of going forward just to give him that slight kick up the arse. But yeah, nothing to worry about.
Yeah, and obviously had that chance very late on in the game as well, which thankfully wasn't there. Match deciding moment. It was a great. It was a
great. Now. Yeah,
it was a great tackle. It was a great tackle afterwards, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, he should have scored that. Should have booted it. It'd have gone in. But...
Absolutely. Moving on to the other side, though, Michael. Of course, Ahmad got the goal, got the assist, and I love his little dance after the end of the game when he comes to the away fans.
Yeah,
probably my favourite thing from the entire game. And he did it for about 2 minutes straight, I think it was. So, like I said before, you're starting to see the type of player he is. He's going to go back to Man United next season and probably break into the first team, whether that's as a first team option, whether he's going to be a backup to someone like, well, Garnacho at this point, actually, isn't it? He's playing very well for their first team at the moment, but he's going to go back. He's going to be an important player for them. But for as long as he's here, he's going to play a vital part in, well, wherever we finish come the end of the season.
Spot on, completely agree. We have to accept that there is very little chance. The only way I could see him being here next season is on loan again if we get up to the Premier League this season, which is probably unlikely. So most likely he's not going to be here next year. But while he is here, make the most of him. As for his performance, I'd go with an 8. I think the funny thing is actually because I looked at one of the videos on Instagram, and obviously we all know the Amad Diallo chant, not the non-kid friendly version, but and I think that was getting played in the background, and Ahmad was dancing to it, and I was thinking, do not hand to his face because he'll keep on, because you'll just have the footage of him just responding to that chant. But his performance was good. Got the assist for the first goal. Got a very, very good second goal, and is just growing with more and more confidence each game as it goes on. He is getting better, and as you said, it's evident as to why Man United paid so much money for him.
Yeah. In the middle of the attacking 3, just behind the striker, John, of course, Alex Pritchard again didn't get a contribution to either of the goals, but like we said before, he played a big part in the opening goal, and played quite a big part for Sunderland throughout the game.
Yeah, I'd probably go over 7. I thought he worked really hard. Not too much came off, but he did help us sort of manage the game a little bit. And again, there was a little bit of what we'll call shithousery again, just sort of trying to piss a few of their players off, and a few of them were biting. So that's you've got to respect that a little bit because people do it to us when teams are beating us and they're wasting time. And I thought it was quite an experienced performance without really being sort of having real quality. But yeah, I'll probably go over 7.
Yeah, and last but not least, Ellis Sims, Michael obviously got his goal.
7 for me. I think the more he gets back fit, the better he'll become. Very good composed finish for the first goal and played his part in throughout the whole game.
Yeah. Man of the match, I would probably err on the side of Ahmad, and I think based off Michael's ratings, he would agree with that. But 2 8s for you, John. Dan Neil and Ahmad, which one are you picking?
Yeah, I'll probably have to go with Ahmad, and actually touched his player of the match award after the game. So that's, I don't know, because some claim to fame.
Thank goodness you said player.
I was going to say that there's
that was on course to sounding something much more not appropriate.
No. It's all kid friendly. Come on.
But like we said, that is the game covered. And now we're going into the World Cup break. Rather unfortunately, because I think I've made it clear I just can't stand international football in general. But it is what it is. And like we said, probably a good thing for Sunderland with so many players out injured, practically a full starting 11. Like we said, 5 defenders missing, 4 of which were injured. You've got Ross Stewart, who hopefully comes back after the World Cup and starts easing himself back into the first team and helps us push back up the table. But as it stands, John, we are 15th. Like we said, game in hand. So take that with a pinch of salt. And 4 points from the playoff positions, very similar goal difference to the rest of the teams up there. But at the same point, 4 points from 23rd, I think it is. 22nd, 4 points from 22nd. So very much mid-table. The second half of the season can certainly go either way. But had someone said at this point last year that, 20 games into a championship season, you're going to lose your main striker, your backup striker is going to get injured for a couple of months. You're going to have, 2 of your starting centre-backs injured, your right-back's going to get injured, but you're still going to be mid-table. You'd probably laugh. But that is a very good position to be in at this point, regardless of what people think.
Yeah, I think if you weigh literally everything up of what's happened, playing sort of 5-6 games without, a striker, I think any team's going to really struggle. And to be fair, we did find a way of keeping those points, ticking over. It could have just gone, lose, odd draw. We know the strikers are the difference in those games at your Blackpool and your Prestons. And the players that we are missing, we know are, almost guaranteed, I'd say they are guaranteed starters. They do make a massive difference. Obviously, Ballard was on fire, Sirkin got injured and you're worried, can Elise do it? And then, Elise comes in, you're thinking, well, Sirkin probably won't get back in if Elise's playing so well. Stewart and Sims, playing fantastically together, and you can play individually, you can play them up front, as well. And I think that if we had them, I think we're looking at a good season. But I don't think it's about where we are now. Obviously, we'll take it where we are. But obviously, it's where we are at the end of the season. If we can add 1 or 2 in January, I think that's the plan. We get a few of the younger players maybe up to speed a tiny bit more, your Bars and your Michus. Obviously, see what Bennett does at the World Cup, and will that give him a bit of a boost when he comes back and get those injured players back? And I don't see any reason why the playoffs shouldn't be the target. Yes, if we fall just short, that's what happens. But the squad we've got, obviously the squad we've had, going into where we are now, you've probably got to take your hat off to Tony Mowbray. It could have. We know as Sunderland fans, it could have been an absolute abomination. We've missed 1 or 2 players in years gone by, and it's like, whoa, we don't know what to do. There's no different plan. Where are we going with it? But now there obviously there is a plan. We've not faltered a bit, but obviously we've had to deal with sticky situations. But I think we've done okay, and we're in a decent enough position. A couple of wins puts you in the playoffs. And I think once we get those players back, I don't think we're going to lose, too many on the bounce. And now it's about, can we find that consistency of winning a few games on the bounce? And that's the difference of, the turn of Christmas is getting us into the playoffs and staying in the playoffs.
Yeah. And obviously between now and January, Michael, there is still a few games. I'm not sure how many off the top of my head, but I think Sunderland are back.
I think it's
on
5.
The 3rd.
I think
we're 4 or
5.
5. Yeah, so you've still got quite a few games between now and then, and obviously league position come January could be completely different for good or for the worse. Say you pick a couple of wins out between now and then. Does it put pressure on, the likes of Kivler, Dreyfus, Speakman to invest more in the squad than they potentially would have? If we are in contention for, a top 6 place, if, like I say, we're 4 points off it at the minute, if you're in a similar position come January, does that kind of heap the pressure on them to invest more than what they were willing to originally?
I think that depends on how December goes. I think if you win enough games, just say, for example, Millwall, that's a game in hand, really, from over half of the division, in fact, for probably 3/4 of the division. So say you beat Millwall. Well, okay, let's go for argument's sake. Say we beat Millwall on December the 3rd. Then we would be 1 point off the playoffs. So we jump up to 10th if we win. So then you think, okay, if you can stay in contention, like John said, it's a funny one, because I think obviously the minimum I'm trying hard not to get carried away with it, because my minimum expectation is consolidation, which I've consistently stuck with since the start of the season. But you look at it, and if you look at the step up to the league, it's not been what I thought it would be. I think it's actually a lot more doable for us to finish in the playoffs than what I originally thought. The way I look at it is, if you get into January, why not go for it a bit? I don't want us to go out and spunk loads of money and try and break the bank to bring players in. But I think if you, within reason and being sensible, I don't see any reason why the recruitment team shouldn't be looking at it. They must themselves have looked at the Championship and gone, this isn't what we thought it was going to be. We're actually handling this quite well. There's no reason why you can't push for the top 6 in it. I mean, look at it. Millwall's in the top 6. I'm not being funny. If Millwall and QPR and Preston and Luton can compete for the top 6 and Coventry, then why can't Sunderland? We've got to play. Our squad has been in nearly every game, and there's only really, with the exception of probably a handful of, you can count on one hand the amount of poor halves of football we've had. So yeah, it depends, because people's expectations change, don't they? For the start of the season, if you look particularly after, say, 10 games ago, we were in the top 6, but obviously it was only 10 games in. So therefore, people's expectations start to go up. So to answer your question, after I've waffled on for 5 minutes, I think if we're in contention by January, then yes, I think the recruitment team should be looking to maybe just try and push a few good players through the door. And then the second half of the season is not a free hit, but you look at it and go, all right, push for the top 6. If we finish in it, fantastic. If we don't finish in it, then no harm done there. But it would obviously, but if expectations aren't raised for the second half of this season, they'll definitely be raised ahead of next.
Yeah. And obviously, I think, looking ahead to January, obviously still plenty of time to go there. And God forbid we don't get any more injuries between now and then, John. But there's still probably 2, possibly 3 positions that are an absolute must for Sunderland to bring in, regardless what the expectations or goals are this season. Whether you want to, win the league, top 6, finish top 10, you've got to bring another striker in. We've seen how much of a struggle and how much of a kind of slog it's been without Sims, without Stewart, and God forbid we wouldn't want to go through that again. We've said for a while now we need a kind of big midfielder, someone to play if Evans isn't fit, or if he needs a rest, or if he's suspended. At the minute, we haven't really got a player to fill that position. Someone 6 foot plus who will win the ball, bully the opposition off the ball, and possibly a fullback as well. We've got Sirkin. After that, we haven't really got a natural left back. So there's still a few areas of the squad which, like I said, regardless of expectation, need to be added on in January.
Yeah, definitely. We all know, the main one is, the striker. I think that has to be a real priority. Because obviously, if you're going to try and shoehorn Sims and Stewart in, you want someone else to come off with a different dynamic, off the bench and make a difference. If games are tight, totally agree again with the midfield. I think we do need someone in there. I'd like someone, I'd like a midfield Danny Bart. I'd be fine. Just someone to sit in there whilst, the rest of the beautiful footballers, as Tony Mowbray called them, can do their thing whilst we've got someone there, because we know Corey Evans isn't going to last, every single game, sort of, Tuesday, Saturday. And yeah, again, I agree with the fullback. Only thing maybe you could say to that is if Huggins is going to stay fit, which he could do. Obviously, he played, what we'd call out of position, didn't he, on Friday night, and played at left back and didn't really look out of place. But maybe we can add, a bit of experience there to keep Sirkin on his toes, and we know he's quite partial to a suspension and an injury. But yeah, I think if we do that, there might be 1 or 2 cases for, sort of loan deals for 1 or 2 of the youngsters to go out, and sort of ready to go again next season.
Yeah. Last but not least, I'm gonna give 3 questions to you both. Best player so far this season for Sunderland. Kind of biggest surprise player, someone that you thought wouldn't perform as well as possibly have done this season, and goal of the season so far, which I think is probably going to narrow down to 3, maybe 4 so far. Starting with you, Michael, best player so far this season for Sunderland.
Well, obviously, in the games that I've watched him, Ross Stewart would have been up there, but I can't really put that because he's been missing for half the games. So it's got to be Danny Bart. Danny Bart has just been a colossal mountain at the back, and without him, I dread to think how many more goals we've conceded.
Yeah, that's fair. John, best player so far?
I'd probably have to agree. For consistency from start to finish, he's been fantastic. I can't really put any real consistency on anyone else. I think
I suppose Luke O'Nien could be up there, which I think would trigger a few people, but I think he's in with a fair shout.
Yeah, and again, he might be the surprise one, because people are thinking, oh, can he make the step up? And he doesn't really look out of place wherever you put him. He will just give you a 7 out of 10 and puts his body on the line and does okay, whether it's full back, centre back in a 3. But yeah, I think for overall consistency of playing every game, like we said, Ross Stewart probably would have been if he wasn't injured. I think a lot of the others, sort of Roberts and Clark and have maybe shown inconsistency. Pritchard the same. I think the one real standout, is Danny Bart at the back. I can't really put my finger on anyone else who's been, over that whole season, which was what we're judging it on.
Yeah, that's fair. Michael, the player that you perhaps had less expectation for this season compared to what they have actually achieved, and I think there's a few players, like Bron said there, Luke O'Nien, could be up there. Anthony Patterson, who this time last year I think was playing non-league football. I think it was with Notts County.
Yes, he
I think
was.
they were non-league. Obviously he came in and he certainly made that number 1 shirt his own. Corey Evans, he could be up there as well. But if you had to pick one player that has surprised you the most this season, for the good, of course.
There's 2 players that I think come to mind. It's hard picking between the 2 of them. One you've just mentioned is Luke O'Nien. And the other one, although to an extent I'm not as surprised, it's Jack Clark, because there was obviously a lot of... when we were looking at getting him permanently in the summer, there was quite a few fans that were sort of going,
Wonder where
not
this
so
is
sure
going.
about that. Don't think he did. Oh, and that's sort of dig it. They're entitled to that. They're entitled to that opinion. But for me, I've always said that I thought, no, actually, I think there is a player in Jack Clark, and I think he's definitely championship quality. If similar to Patrick Roberts, like I said all those months ago, give him a home, see what he can do. And although he's had some frustrating games, I think on the whole, he's been one of our best players. I'm probably just going to go with Luke O'Nien, only because I think Jack Clark, I knew had that in him. I always thought these type of performances when he's been on form has had that in him. Luke O'Nien, to be honest, I didn't think would feature as prominent a role as he has, and to not only feature as well as consistently as he has, but to not look out of place and to be actually quite reliable, I think it says a lot when people were devastated he was missing for the Birmingham game through suspension. So I'd go with Luke O'Nien but there are a few. But you're right, there are a few players in that category.
Yeah, I genuinely hadn't realised how long Luke O'Nien had been at Sunderland. I think it's 5 years since he signed for us.
This is his 5th season, isn't it? Because he signed at the start of the first League One season, didn't he?
Yeah, that's a long time. I didn't even realise he'd been here that long.
Nor did I. I realised that a while back. I was like, goodness me, he's been here 4-5 years. Oh, no way.
So I think he's about 27, 28 years old now. And I think we signed him when he was 22, 23.
That's an even bigger shock, because I'm sure, wasn't he I thought he was like 22, 23 when we signed him.
Yeah, he was,
And then you just reminded me he was like 28. He's like late 20s at this point.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
That's been here for a long time. I'd have to check, but I feel like he's probably already up there with one of Sunderland's longest serving players, especially in recent times, at least anyway. But moving on, John, player that has surprised you the most this season?
I think I'll probably have to go with Patterson. Like we say, where he's come from in a whole year, and start of last season was 3rd choice, and we're talking about a goalkeeper from Bayern Munich and championship player in Lee Birch, who's played for Coventry for quite a long time. To come full circle and be number 1 and see both of those 2 off. Lee Birch could have probably easily stayed here. I'm sure the club would have offered him a deal, but with the way Patterson's gone, and obviously Hoffman is not coming back at all. That's testament to Patterson, and his performances this season have been. I think he's growing. Obviously, he's still very, very young, but he seems to be growing. In each performance. Obviously, early on there was, he couldn't really, command his area, in coming for crosses and those types of things. But he seems to be working on it. Seems to be getting better. Seems, just watching him Friday coming out and just, spreading himself, being brave and, bollocking off his players, and those are the types of things you maybe wouldn't have seen from him. So he really is growing into that. And there's always that worry, with a young player who's obviously, a local lad, can he handle the pressure? Can he step it up? Because obviously Dan Neil can fluctuate. Embleton the same. You know that sometimes the local lads are maybe the target because they are local lads. But for him to step up and what I'd say is a key part, of the team now. For me, it has to be Patterson. But you could probably name, like say, Luke O'Nien. Again, you were always worried would he step up, and to me, he has. You're probably worried can other players step up, and no one's really looked out of place, at all. So it's testament to the squad we've got, I think.
Yeah. And last but not least, this is probably the most rhetorical question ever. But goal of the season so far, Michael, is, like I said, there's really three that you can look at and make a case for. But I'm going to be totally honest, I think there's only really one. But we'll see where it goes.
There is one. And it's obviously going to be Jack Clarke against Reading. There's just no competition. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Pritchard Huddersfield goal and Ahmad's on Friday both were very, very good goals and both full of great quality. But this is one of the best Sunderland goals. I mean, and obviously for context, since I've been into football for about 11 years now, this is easily probably one of the best Sunderland goals I've ever seen. And obviously the technique in the passing, the crispness of the passing, the fluidity of the passing, everything is. You can just tell the players were confident, and you could tell that I remember watching the game in the pub actually, and I didn't realize how good a goal it was live because I was focused on just trying to score it. But when I looked at it back, I thought, oh, that's a good goal. And it's not the type of goal you'd associate with Sunderland. It's just not it's never been the type of goal we score. If there's going to be a mint goal, it's going to be someone scoring a freak goal from 25 yards. But this is just great. And I'll be honest, I'll be astounded if this does not win goal of the season. It's at least got to be in contention for it come May.
I think all three of them will be up there as well, to be honest. And I think picking Sunderland's goal of the season, even if it was just half goal of the season so far, it would be quite a hard one to pick, but hopefully plenty more of that to come in the second half of the season when everyone's back fit. We've got players to score the goals at the end of it. But John, goal of the season so far?
Yeah, I think we all know, don't we? That ring. I've got to do a quick shout out for Lyndon Gooch against Sheffield United because that was lovely. I'm sure he's fuming that we've scored these goals. The goals do just keep. They're not flukes. They're obviously things we work on, and we've got such good technical players. And no disrespect, but the shit we've had in a lot of years gone by. We're talking sort of 5, 6, 7 years. Where some of them couldn't string a pass together, and just from goalkeeper, you're talking about local lads in there as well. So not like players we brought in for 10 million. It's just silky football, and it's not even just the passing; it's the movement. The passing, is quite an easy thing, but the movement just to move off those players, those Reading players, I'm telling you now, do not know what's hit them. They haven't got a clue where to go, and that goes from when it's flicked down the wing, when it's flicked into the middle, to Pritchard playing it out wide. Dan Neil's already gone. Their defender hasn't got a clue where Dan Neil is, and then obviously Jack Clarke sends his defender, the other way, and even the commentator says you're hoping that he bangs it in, and to be fair, I'll be honest, watching it, I was probably really emotional, and I was literally like, oh my God, what have I just watched? Because we know we've watched some absolute shite, and it's good to see that it wasn't a fluke. We have backed that up with similar goals, and we play some really good football. So, I don't think we're under any illusion that is not going to win, goal of the season, because it's just fantastic football, and I'm almost gutted that I was supposed to go to Reading, but I couldn't get a ticket in the end. But it would have been nice to see it live. But I'll happily contribute to the 15 million views it's had. I think 14 and a half on my views, because I will regularly watch it most weeks. So yeah, it's a fantastic goal, and like we say, long may those goals come.
Yeah, you know what, right? It's honestly just incredible the amount of people, even on social media, on Twitter, when that goal happened, the amount of neutrals that were tuning into that. And I do wonder whether a lot of it is because of, like John said, the shite we've had to put up with for 5-6 years on the trot, back-to-back relegations, worst period of our history, 4 years in League One. The big story is Sunderland, but I think that's a way of announcing Sunderland's back and hopefully on the up. Just a quick one for unsung goal, probably Jack Clarke against Rotherham was another one where Ross Stewart gave him the ball and he took on basically half the Rotherham team, left them for dead. But it's just nice for once to see a Sunderland team so confident goal scoring wise. And yes, I'm someone who prides on clean sheets, but some of the goals we've scored this season, some of the football we've played has just been superb so far. Long may it continue.
I think it's going to be fun come the end of the season to watch a nice 10-minute long video of Sunderland's goals of the season from the club. And I think it's fair to say that Sunderland will have a on this day post kind of secured for the next 20 years with that goal against Reading. So that's one to look out for the next, for the foreseeable future. But that is all of it for today. And that I said, it's the World Cup coming up. Sunderland's next game is less than 3 weeks away now. Obviously, Millwall at home. It was 3 weeks on Saturday just gone. So not that long of a break, thankfully, for the Championship. I think Premier League is a little bit longer than that for that to come back. But of course, we don't have to worry about that for an extra season. So it's a bonus for that. But we'll try and get a podcast out between now and that Millwall game, whether it's covering the World Cup or something to do with Sunderland, whatever it may be. We'll have something out, possibly 1 or 2 between then. But until that, we will see you later.
That's all, folks.